Trevor is one of the best negotiators I have ever met. You know, when you get to be blessed, by with the presence of somebody who's really good in their space in their area. I'm very excited for you guys to get exposure to him today. So I'm going to let Trevor take it away so you get maximum time with him today. And I'll be on the chat. So if you guys need anything at all, just, you can send your messages on the chat and I'll make sure they're getting to Trevor.
Yeah, like Brandy said, I have lived and breathed my pretty much my entire existence in some form of negotiating or another. And I suppose it's a bit of a mentality I had since grade school. And I really thought everything was a negotiation. You hear about those kids that are 3 and 4 years old and they're constantly negotiating with their parents and they're coming up with well, how about, and they're bargaining. I was that. I also had a father that was a pretty master negotiator. So Brandy got to witness some pretty dynamic, we'll call it, negotiations from a very young age, especially when I didn't understand what was going on. But I will jump into the slides that I've got for you, and I'll weave in some of my background there. And I'm going to give you guys what I've now since unpacked in what was natural to me that I could then bring out into words and techniques or tools or awarenesses that anyone and everyone can use, whether it's built into their nature or not. Does that sound good and helpful and useful? All right, let's do a little screen share here, and I will get you guys rolling. Okay, can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Beautiful. Okay. And I honestly didn't put together a huge long presentation for you guys. I put together a robust one. So buckle in. Brandy constantly says that every time I speak, especially in bullet points, every bullet point you could think on for a day, and I don't necessarily think that's true, but we've only probably got about 10 or 12 slides to go through, but I really left a lot of time in there for your questions. And I can even at the end, I can take all the questions. I can do some role playing. I can handle anything that you guys have seen. And as I go through this, I'm going to try to share with you guys two perspectives at the same time. I'm going to share negotiation from a stance of if you are getting hired for a job and you're in the seat of talking with an interviewer. That's the primary that I have set up, but I'm going to weave in if you're on the other side of the table too. And if you are the hiring manager, well, it's a negotiation there too, and you have budgets and things of that nature. So I'm gonna weave that in for you guys as well. All right, so negotiate competitive offers. And has anyone on the call ever read the book Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss? Hopefully a few. If not, I would Amazon cart that or Audible that right away. That is where I related to negotiating probably the most. I've got probably 7 or 8 different books that I've blended and woven together. But that one, what it did is it blended in the softer empathetic side of understanding that we're all human and understanding that everybody is actually trying to achieve and accomplish an end goal that serves them as an emotional decision-making human more than just a head-to-head competitive battle. There are some that just love that, but not everyone. And for me, I really related to the understanding either fear or excitement or gameful play or business pursuits and any degree of intensity there. Any of those emotional components, I thought, well, what if I learned those instead? Isn't that the 80-20 rule? Can't I just learn that component and practice that component, and I can solve 80% of my negotiations with 20% of the effort? All right, let's make the slides work. There we go. Okay, so you saw executive pivots up on the screen. One of my roles, primary roles, is in running executive pivots with Brandy, in fact. And I'm taking some segments out of this full program. Executive pivots is an entire methodology and an entire process that's extremely robust. If you guys haven't heard of this through any connection with Brandy or anywhere else, um, we will take somebody, we primarily focus on somebody that already is in or is pursuing an intentional path and direction of becoming an executive. So that can be anywhere from, senior managers to heads of, to VPs, to SVPs, C-suite, all of that. So anything, if somebody wants to head that direction one day, we have that, or if they want to pivot into their own consulting business. I've run several of those myself for a while, so we have those programs too. But focusing in on executive pivots a bit, here's what we help take people through. Let's start phase one in the yellow there. So helping someone define their future and what they actually want, so that they don't pick a trajectory that ends up in the wrong place. Differentiation, what helps you stand out. Hopefully, many of you are like, yep, old news, old news. I know you got to find out what stands out. Great. We have some intense depth of how to identify that and help someone create that for themselves. Then we brand them, get all of the assets or LinkedIn and resume to line up. Comms or communications, get everything aligned with the right words that make sense for all of that. Network, either the person we're talking to, yours, or ours through executive pivots and the thousands and thousands of either recruiters or off-market opportunities that we know about, especially in that executive level. Then the last quadrant here, this is what I'm going to focus on today. Okay, so the interview, getting it, while in it, and then the offer component. So we're going to hang in that quadrant today. And just know that there is a ton more, but I really am just going to try to hand you guys the answers in the back of the book, give you some things to learn that are either already new, or most of the time we just need reminded of and you've already heard. And I'll give you some very tactical keywords that I needed. I'm a very literal brain, and I needed to know exactly what do I say, and I needed to test drive phrases until I could make them my own with my own rhythm and flair. All right, so thank you for coming. Nice to meet all of you guys. Who is Trevor? My background started extremely literal and extremely linear. So I've been writing computer code since I was in fifth grade. Made sense to me. I was that guy that loved math. I got into Lean Six Sigma, statistical analytics, got a black belt certification, started doing process improvement, process design. As I went down that path, I realized there was this human component, and I jumped over and I took a very analytical approach to studying how people made decisions. And so it was, this very analytical approach to how do I become social and how do I interact with other people effectively. So if you are more of the person that is not the life of the party nature, hopefully that gives you hope that you can be the programmer that honestly, sadly, lived and breathed in basements with video games and said words like, we're going to meet at the layer, and thought that was normal speak for humans. And I then, after studying how people make decisions, different preferences, Gallup's strengths was a huge part of that, to be honest. I went down and I started learning that there is this perception of it's not a right way or a wrong way, it's a preference way. And that was a mental bomb for me, and really sent me down that path of, okay, well, how do people make decisions? Why do they make them that way? And that is what we're going to unpack here today, is a result of probably about 15 or 20 years now of those studies, and taking them to an nth degree. I personally didn't get jobs because I was the most qualified on paper. I obviously had to have the qualifications and check some boxes. There's many times that I didn't, though. I got jobs because I understood the how the interview actually works. And I'll even add on that the pre-interview. I started learning that, and hopefully you guys could relate to this. If you have an incredible resume and you submit it 100 times, it can get looked over a majority of the times. And then you can have an okay resume and the right referral, and you're a shoe in. That right there really jumped out to me as where I wanted to put my time, what was worthy of my time. And then when I was sitting in the interview, I realized I've run about 6 different businesses at this point, maybe 15, but I call it 6. Brandy calls it 15. Uh, I realized while I was sitting there, it was no different than any other business deal or talking to a lender about a loan, or it was just two peers evaluating a business decision. And I didn't have to be afraid and I didn't have to be subjugated. I didn't have to put myself in a superior position and be over them either. I just became an equal in the room, and it changed the tone, it changed the pace, it changed the questions. And that mental shift that made everything so much more peaceful. And also the results they just came so much easier. So I'm going to walk you guys through first what's going to seem a little more lofty, but I promise it's the first step. This is the interchanges. These are the things that I had to realize and become aware of that were going on around me. And then after that, I'm going to go through a few more. Here's what you actually execute on, and here's what you can actually say and do. So I'm going to pair both of them, but I don't believe if you say the right things, if you're not in the right mental headspace, the way that that's said is going to even unconsciously be noticed by the person across from you, and it's not going to have results. So don't skip the first steps. You got to get the mentality right, and you got to get the internal posture right. Okay. You are not pleading. Okay. So again, if you're in the seat of the interviewer, you are not pleading. If you are in the seat of the interviewer, it doesn't matter. You're not pleading. Okay. I understand on the inside, maybe it feels like that. You either need the position filled or you need a job filled and some income. I really get it. What you need to do is first calm center a little bit and act as if. If you'll define in your head, paint the picture, tell yourself a story. What would you be acting like if you didn't need the job? How would you interview then? Let's say you were just going out there and doing an interview for educational purposes. You were exploring and learning and you were studying. What does happen in an interview? What can I influence? What happens when I say this? What if you're just test driving the interview for your own learning purposes? Would you act different than if you show up to that interview needing the job? Very different, yes? Likewise, if you're hiring for a position and you just opened the position and you've got budget, the position's kind of a luxury ad. It's going to be really nice once it's up and running. And that's your posture. Compare that to this has been open for 18 months and I'm manic and it's driving me nuts and I have to fill this position. All of that energy that you're putting off, all of that, the crisp edges on a little bit of tones. Somebody may not even have studied psychology, but their subconscious is picking up on alarm or fear or alert or defense. And so either seat that you're in, act as if. Just write down, here's what I would be if I were not pleading or not desperate or not needing. Once you have that written out in front of you, read it out loud. And now you have a definition that your brain can grab onto. And in the middle of moving too quick and trying to defend a position and trying to adjust, you go, oh yeah, not pleading. And you can calm right in the middle of it. It takes practice and it's not necessarily easy at first, but it gets very easy very quickly. Just test it out. All right, you are interviewing them as much as they are interviewing you. I alluded to this in the last slide. And if you find yourself always just answering their question, I'm going to get into this here in a few more slides because this is really important. Or you are over explaining, or you're trying to be liked. You're in performance mode. And many people have learned to notice that somebody's performing. Others, they're unconsciously going to notice that you are putting on a bit of a show. So you have got to switch that and go, I am actually interviewing them just as much as they're interviewing me. I don't know if I want to work here, or vice versa. And if you go into it with that posture, this is where negotiation begins. You are currently setting the stage for how your sentences later land. Okay. So if you have ever over answered, clarified nervously, filled silence, or tried to convince, something in this internal posture is actually what needs adjusted, not your delivery. If you'll adjust this internal posture, then you won't have to work as hard with coming up with the right things to say. Have you guys ever said that to yourself or another, or heard it? I'm just trying to find the right thing to say. If you've got the internal down, it starts to get kind of difficult to mess it up on the way out. I'm going to highlight that fill silence one real quick. If you hang in silence and you get comfortable with a little bit of silence, it seems like an eternity, but 2 seconds. Ready? I smiled, I smirked, I moved my head a little bit, perfect silence. And everybody felt this huge gap and void. I have to admit, I don't even feel the gap and the void anymore because it's comfortable. But people want to fill silence. And the person that does more talking is not necessarily the one in charge of the conversation. Usually they're not. Less talking. I have another couple slides we'll get into that I gave you 2 slides on it. More questions, less statements. But that silence, if you can get comfortable with that silence, you can change the entire tone of a conversation just by going, I see. Do you feel an energy shift right there? Almost everybody does in almost every conversation. And it's just because it's just long enough that a different part of your brain reacts and you become more aware and everybody shifts. You can be in intensity, you can be competition, you can go head to head, you can be in hardcore negotiations, and there's silence and everybody goes, and then you move on. All right? Takes practice. All right, another one. Put yourself in their shoes. You hear this, it's a cute phrase, it's fun, but I really mean it. Let's say you're interviewing and you look at the company, you look at the job description, you look at the manager's title, the hiring manager who you're meeting with, you look at their job description, and you go, okay, what if I was that manager? What would I be panicked about? What would I be thinking? What would I be needing? Because in reality, in my opinion, all negotiations are actually sales. All sales, when done properly and correctly, are actually just solving a need or solving a problem. You don't solve a problem without finding out what it is. You can take your best guess and you can have your reasons for that best guess. But then you might need to ask, well, aren't you now armed with a really great question for during the interview? Isn't that cool? So think about where your hiring managers come from. Try to relate to your past experience. Think about them having back-to-back interviews, same questions over and over and over, same answers over and over and over. And all the pressure. Have you guys ever had pressure from leadership to fill a role? We need you to get back to your job. What is the deal? Find an applicant that we can, that's a part of our culture. That's what they're doing, and that's where they're coming into an interview with. They are actually the ones that are begging, pleading, and desperate for that hero and that right person to show up in their life miraculously. And see how you can see both sides at the same time, or the interviewer or the interviewee. That's actually what's going on. And then likewise, if you're the interviewer, the person in the other seat, they probably aren't sitting in this session right now with us. They probably are over there going, how do I do and say all the right things and get hired? I need an offer. I'll take anything. Well, so if you're the hiring manager, know that that's what they're coming in with. And now you can understand how maybe to get some of those armors to fall off and diffuse some of that so you can get some real authentic conversations going. And as you put yourself in their shoes, get ready to type out your questions that you don't know the answers to, because you won't know all of them. And obviously, you can see how long a job's been open and how sick of the interviews there are. So you can see that intensity as well, just in that. Okay, time and a place to be basic. What I mean by this, on a resume and on an application, do you need to at least check some of the required boxes? Yes, some of them. That's the basic. Okay. There is a movie from probably the 90s, because that's me and my era. I believe it's called 21. It's a Vegas movie, and this kid is applying for this monster elite scholarship, and he's got all the straight A's and he's got all of the boxes checked. But so does everybody else at, let's call it Harvard. Stanford, Harvard. It was an Ivy League for sure. Well, so the guy that he's interviewing with at the college and talking about the scholarship, he goes, yeah, but what makes you jump off the page? What's the wow factor? And it turns into this whole movie of how he went and, counted cards and this wow factor, and the movie becomes the story. So great. But that is what I believe, that when it comes to, again, setting that stage, you need to hit the basics, be basic. You need to check some of those boxes, and you need the wow factor. Now, this is where I'm really going to weave in some of those Gallup strengths philosophies. So if you don't know Gallup strengths, there's 34 different strengths, and you can take an assessment and you can learn what are your top 5 strengths, gifts, talents, things that you are so incredible at that you actually are kind of terrible at teaching them because you don't know how you do them. They're just part of woven fabric in you. Now, if you aren't sure how to take either that or any other method and translate that into your wow factor, into your pop, into your differentiation, remember that second yellow slice on the pie I showed you earlier? If you aren't sure how to translate that, there are people that are naturally gifted with the ability to do this and studied on how to do it with methodologies. So if you don't have that, truly be honest with yourself. Get help. Hire help. What's it worth to stand off the page and land something? What if it saves you 5 months, 4 months, 3 months? What's that math work out? What's it worth? Just hire somebody. Find somebody that actually has some kind of track record that can do this extremely well and can help you jump off the page. Okay. Because you got to check the boxes, but then what? There's 1,000 people that check the boxes. And that's the space that I've lived and breathed in. Brandy and I always we were able to add both lenses and perspectives. And it was really cool to see our 2 lenses and perspectives come together to where we're incredibly similar now. So Brandy was the academician, and she did the straight A's. I know anybody that knows her, you're not surprised at all. And then we have this wild child. Well, what's the loophole, or what's the angle, right? And as we then started realizing, it was actually probably Gallup strengths mostly that brought us together. We realized how those 2 worlds together, that was the real powerhouse, and that was the real way we could help people succeed in any goal or endeavor that they wanted themselves. Um, okay, so while you're balancing being basic versus jumping off the page, um, think through: have you ever been hired for something that you didn't quite fit? Have you ever hired for somebody that they didn't quite fit? That is what I'm talking about. Why was that? I put that here. Why did that happen? How did that happen? It's because something emotional got inside of somebody. Somebody believed in somebody. Somebody just knew, right? You could feel it. You knew, or they were close, or it's really a risk assessment. And that really is what most job interviews are. It's a risk and cost value analysis. Again, very, very techie, very linear, blended with high psychology. They're looking to see, all right, we're trying to use some filters to get the right people into the door, right? Like we've all done it. And then once in there, are you willing to take that to get that? Well, all you have to do is give a high enough value for what they're getting, and they might just get excited. Okay. Job descriptions are wish lists. I like a good wish list. It's my guide. It feels like the answer's in the back of the book. I know what to appeal to. I know what defenses to build up in advance against. I like them. But is that where it ends? I don't believe so. In my experience, I think the last, that would be about 9 of 10 career moves that I've made, I did not have all qualifications required by the job description. That's my history. I just learned what the other person actually needed and wanted. I knew what they wrote. I saw that, and I knew what they were after. I got it. But put yourself in their shoes and figure out what they want, what they need, and help them solve it. My preference, last bullet on here, is to not perform. We talked about that, but start diagnosing. If you can learn what their biggest pain points are, long term and short term, you could possibly solve one of them right there in the interview, or vice versa. If you're on the interviewing side, if someone tells you that the location is what they need and what they want, don't get too focused on salary then. Okay, we're going to talk about total compensation package. Pay attention to what somebody actually wants. Redefine best offer on the fly. That is a fluid concept. Okay. All right. I told you guys I would get into tactical. Here we are. So that's all your background, all of your, how do you set the stage? Okay. And I do truly want to reiterate that is where the powerhouse plays are. These next few slides, I think they are amazing, and I think they're helpful, and they are truly things that I use. I think I can risk saying daily, still to this day, in any conversation. But setting the stage, that's the 20% that produces 80% of the results. Okay, this is your career. This is your opportunity. Again, I'm talking from the interview seat, the interviewee. Run your show. Don't let the other person run the show. Not because you're against them, not because they shouldn't, not because they can't. No, this is your life. This is your opportunity. This is your career. This is your choice. So the person asking the questions is the one guiding the conversation. Now, don't be an extremist. I know, I have that too. Don't be an extremist and nth degree this and absolute this. That's not the point. Have a little balance. The interviewer is going to ask questions. No kidding. And if you answer every question with a question, it's going to seem fake. Again, are you performing? Yeah, at that point, you're performing. So have a little balance here. If there's a question that needs answered, that's fine, answer it. But if you come in with that right tone, that pace, the right understanding of the type of conversation that you're having, if you come in with that, you'll be able to think of questions that fit on the fly. It's just a conversation, okay? The person that asks the most questions wins. That's your negotiation. That's the sales. That's that world. And so take statements and convert them into question form. That's influence. In the Gallup strengths, there are quadrants of strengths that fit into being strategic, into executing. One of those quadrants is influence. You have influence strengths. Okay. If some of you don't have those, that's okay. You don't have to have those. If you can learn the discipline of or the practice of converting statements into questions, there you go. You've got influence, and it won't even zap your energy, because I know if you operate outside of your natural strengths, it can zap your energy. One little quick play out to take statements into questions, not going to obliterate you. Okay. Again, it just takes a little bit of practice. All right. So when you do get asked questions, what someone is trying to know is how you think. Now, again, pause that and put yourself as you're interviewing. If you've ever interviewed somebody, are you trying, when you ask them a question, are you trying to hear just their answer? Are you listening and looking for all of the things? You're looking for why they answered the way they did. How did they carry themselves while they answered? The interviewer is just getting to know you. They're getting to know how you think. That's it. Well, if you just answer their question, that's fine. You just don't get to share anymore beyond that answer. And they are only able to get to see how you think in a very limited view of what they've decided in advance to write down. There's so much more opportunity there, isn't there? You have the ability to tell stories. We love stories. Keep them concise. Again, know your strength. If you're a strength person that is a storyteller, if you ever say the sentence, long story short, little red flag. If you say long story short, that means your stories are long. Okay. And that's okay. There is a time and a place for a good depth story with all kinds of really exciting moving parts. An interview might not be that time. So know that that's you, and know that that's okay, and know that that's a really great time and a place. So when you do tell a story, you can go into ChatGPT if you want. You can say, hey, what's a concise way to tell a story? And you can hit a bullet, and a bullet. And it's going to take a lot in you to hold back and not tell everything that's flooding your mind and heart and soul. I know. But you do have the ability to tell a story here. A lot of the time, you'll hear interviewers talk about and ask, tell me about a time when. They're asking you to tell a story. Okay, so yes, that's on a very basic level of, yep, tell a story, do it concise, and it's your opportunity is what it is. This is not, a lot of people have viewed that as something being hard on them. Oh, I don't know when to tell about a time when. No. Other way around. Oh, thank goodness you're not confined by just a right answer. Instead, you get to tell them how you think. You get to tell them how you decision make by something that actually occurred. Okay. So this is actually a gift when someone lets you tell stories. They want to hear stories. They want to tell stories. So when you convert your questions to them, I'm sorry, you convert your statements into questions for them, they now get to tell stories too. Okay. And you both get to convey your actual understanding and your application. And in that, you get off track. The interview often goes a little long, because if you really get in deep, you actually start working together. I don't know a better way to get hired for something than in the interview to start doing the job. Does that make sense to you guys? If they already see how easy that was to just start doing the job with you, well, that feels like you're the choice above and beyond the obvious choice. So your questions to them also, that is your ability to say things to them that you know, and you want to showcase your expertise, and you want to, for lack of a better term, if you want to be the know-it-all, if you know that you are good at something and you want to tell them how amazing you are at them, throw it into a question. And I'm going to go a little too obvious here, just so that you guys can hear and feel it. Do you guys think that in the culture here at XYZ company, do you think somebody that has led a group of people of maybe 5, 10 in a project, executed it, we had to change the date a couple of times, but the communication was good and the sign off was spot on, and then the results were 18% higher than projected? Is that, and then you can either say, is that normal here? Is that okay here? Do you guys see that here? By me telling that story in the form of a question, they just heard what I've experienced. They just heard what we did, the results. They understand how many people. They understand that I already know it's a good thing, and I just want to know, does that fit here? Now, obviously, that was a pretty obvious one, but take any statement that you want to say, sit down, and put a question on it. Make it into a question. Okay, I am amazing at public speaking. Make it into a question. Do you guys have any public speaking opportunities? They're going to ask why. You just volleyed yourself up to be the expert. You didn't have to brag. You didn't have to push an agenda. You just asked a question. And now you're invited to talk about it. Or even if they go, not really. Have you done that in your past? And all of a sudden you're in another conversation. That is what I mean. And that's how it plays out. So if you'll sit down and go, okay, what kind of things on my resume? And again, hire someone to help you with this. Sit down and go, okay, what makes me stand off the page? What is my differentiation? This is part of that comms sliver of developing the lingo. And then you go, okay, now there's my 8 sentences that I really would love to share if I get the opportunity in this interview. Rewrite those in question form and say them out loud. What you need is for your brain to hear them out loud so that in the moment on the fly, you have the ability to recall those. And if you let them be unfamiliar until the moment you need them, you're going to regret it. In fact, that moves us into practice like an A-list actor. A-list actors, they stand in front of a mirror. They practice their lines just like we did in a spelling bee. Like they do what we consider childish, but it's because it works and we're all actually just human and we need to. You need to hear the words come out of your mouth before you first try to do it. I had a son that would not, I still have a son. He's 14 now, but he was probably about 7 years old at the time. And he would not raise his hand and ask for a break, for a restroom, for anything, because he didn't want to be viewed in the room as needing something or weak. And we had to have him practice saying, excuse me, Miss Smith, can I take a break? He couldn't get himself to say that. It was too scary. It was too foreign. But after he said that about 10 times at home, well, now it seemed okay and it seemed normal. And it was really easy to say that at school because it had become a normalized thing that he had seen multiple times as normal and accepted and as part of culture. And he was now willing to take the risk on just one tweak of a new environment. We are no different. We need to say things out loud that we're going to try to say things out loud when there's a lot of newness. Okay? So when you come up with those questions, say them out loud. Do it in your car. If you need a private box to be in, that's okay. You're only doing it for your subconscious. You just need your subconscious to hear you say it. That's it. And it looks like we covered that whole slide all in one. Do you think it would work here if someone? Okay, there's your lead in for about every statement. There's your hack that you can take and weave around. There's some other ways to say it, and there's some other phrasings, and you need your personality in it at some point. If you just need a starting point, there you go. Okay. All right. Negotiations have begun. They definitely have. Do you guys feel like we are kind of a long ways into the actual negotiation process and we haven't even talked about a job offer or all of the conversations that happened after that? And now that we are here, do you think that this conversation from this point forward is a whole lot less stressful and a whole lot less scary and a whole lot smoother, simple, and partnery because you are now seen different? That's how it's worked out for me. So, all of that role framing, scope, which roles do people have, authority, metrics. So, tossing those metrics in there. Most of all, the want. Have you ever been in a position that you were like, I want to hire them, or that's the job that I want? That hopefully was created naturally and organically. But at the same time, if somebody understood what somebody was looking for and knew how to highlight, oh, yeah, that is here. That's not typically what we lead with and share. But wow, the things that are really important to you, we actually have those too. So sure, I'll showcase those to you. And then the want explodes. Like that is normal. And then the other way around, if you can showcase in your resume and in your interview and in your conversation what you bring and what just happens and what you know on purpose how to do, you can even be at the executive C-suite level. You can be CEO applicant and you can showcase the simplicity in which you navigate all of the varying moving environments and team structures and cultures to move a company forward, and dramatically so, because there is a mutual win to be had. And I'm just looking for the right place to deploy that and enjoy building with results and a whole team that wants to run with. You say something like that, and all of a sudden they're like, "That's what I want," and they want you. And obviously, they want to make sure you're not just making stuff up. So you got to have the backing, and that's why you take the time to do the 8 slices on that pie, and you get all of it aligned and spoken to, so it's all succinct, and you really do have the backing that lines up with the branding and the words and the delivery. But it's the want. If you can create the want, you can go clear back to very basic marketing and go supply and demand. You create the supply. I'm sorry, you create the demand. Sorry about that. That was so smoothly delivered. You create the need and the want and the demand, and then you supply it. Okay, you create the want. Right. So we got leverage already is set. Couple techniques. Mirroring. This is one that I got right out of the book that I mentioned in the beginning, the Chris Voss's Never Split the Difference book. Mirroring. There's a couple different kinds of this. You'll hear mirroring in a tone, a pace, a posture. There's the chameleon effect, isopraxism, postural echo, or limbic synchrony. You guys heard of all that? All right. I lean on mirroring. Sure is easier to say. Okay. Everybody is comfortable with people like themselves, either the same beliefs, the same motivations, the same socioeconomic class, the same, similar to us. Okay. All of those fancy words in the third bullet there, most of what they mean is a bit of a physical, I guess not entirely, but there's a physical component to this that happens. If someone leans forward and they have their forearms on a table, you may already lean forward and put your forearms on the table. If you don't, maybe you should, because now you're the same as them and they see you that way. If someone's leisured back with their arm on a chair, if you leisure back and put your arm in a chair, and don't follow them, don't immediately make these shifts. Let there be some natural movement here. But people will feel comfortable with somebody that is very similar to them. If somebody starts getting excited about a topic and they start talking faster, and faster and going. And they're like, and then we need to do it. And this is the project that we need to work on. And if we can just find somebody that will run this kind of a project, and they start doing that, maybe take your pace up too. Physical mirroring. Okay. I mirror tone. I mirror intensity. I start mirroring the words that they use. If somebody uses a set of words in a question, sure, it makes sense to use them in an answer. It also would be kind of cool to use them 4 answers later, or tell a story and grab a couple of those words that you heard them use that are more personality type words. If someone's talking about the efficiency of it all and hitting the goals, I like that goal word. That's a very usable word in a lot of capacities. So weave that in. You mirror their lingo, their pace, their posture, anything you can. Okay? Now, advanced, you can change and shift everything with these same techniques. It's like an anti-mirror. If everything is going just meh, just okay, and you're like, oh, this is clunky and this is rough, if you just change it all, if it's very methodical and very robotic and it's going downhill and you want to make a shock and awe change, you can add a block of silence and everybody leans in a little bit. Your whole atmosphere just changed. You actually have the ability to make that shift for yourself. And then if things are speeding up and they're getting out of control and you're getting manic, you can go, can I ask you a question? And ask it in a slow tone pace. You change everything again. And you can get it off that neuroses back to a space that you feel like you can hang on to the reins rather than trying to ride two Clydesdales through a field of whipping grass. And think about this in terms of pace too. Here's just something extra. Think about a voicemail recording when you leave a voicemail. Have you ever left a voicemail in somebody's voicemail and they were almost apologizing for the length of the name of their company they work for? And so they speed up their voicemail. Hi, thanks for calling. This is Trevor with Onyx Unlocks Executive Pivots. Would you please leave a message whenever you get as you get a chance? I'll get back to you whenever I get a chance. Okay. Or, hi, this is Trevor with Onyx Unlocks Executive Pivots. Thanks for the call. Please leave a message and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. It's actually twice as long, even for somebody that really likes to move quick and be efficient. Something about that makes me feel like they're comfortable, so I'm comfortable. So just because you're talking faster, it actually could be hurting you. So pay attention to the pace. And as you get more comfortable being more and more self-aware, pay attention to their pace, because it'll also start revealing to you how comfortable and secure they are in what they're talking about. And they could be really excited about something, or they could be on their heels a little bit and playing defense. Tennis players getting smoked with the ball, and they're on their back, and they're jerky and twitchy as they're hitting back while they're on their heels. They're being twitchy forward. That's what we do in conversation too. Labeling. All right. So with labeling, also from the same book we talked about, the Never Split the Difference with Chris Voss, you've got a psychologist and writer, Daniel Coleman. He talks about that the highest form of emotional intelligence is recognizing one's own emotions in real time. And you just practice identifying this. You practice identifying tension. If you can real time identify your own emotions, you can call them out and you can say, boy, I'm mad. Right now, I'm mad. Or I'm sad. Or I'm scared. Or, man, I'm happy. Man, I'm enthusiastic. Like, if you can label your emotions in real time, you are on a top tier A game. For labeling, this is for calling out tensions. If you have anything that has tension in the room, you hear about, let's talk about the elephant in the room. That's what this is with a technique. Okay. So there's your phrase. It seems like. just throw the word it seems like on the front of about anything you want to say. And now everybody has to address something difficult and hard. And you you can now have a conversation about it. And everybody's no longer making assumptions or reacting. You can just talk and you can just cover it and you can clear up miscommunication. And somebody in an interview that sees something of conflict show up and sees you call it out and communicate through it, if you were on the other side of that table, how would you feel if somebody did that? Isn't that like, oh, I can work with this? This that was not that hard. That they handle conflict well. It seems like I needed that. And I've got you 3 examples there. And we're getting a little short on time, so we are about finished. That's right. This is another emotional driven component. So if you get somebody to say you're right or okay, often they've shut down. You don't want to be right. That means they've subjugated themselves to you. If you get them to say that's right, you've just engaged a belief. Okay. So if you're talking to someone and you go, so is this how it works? Again, it takes a question to do it, or you can do it with a sentence or a statement, but getting them to, is this how it works at this culture? Does somebody have the autonomy that they need to go create, and the communication is key? And they go, that's right. Or any version of that. That's when they're leaning into you. That's when they desire you. That's creating the want. So the more times that you can get them to either physically say or in their mind, that's right, they cannot control their need for you, and they just see you as needing to be part of their organization. All right, closeout questions. So you've got do you have any questions for me? There are a lot of good, like I told you, you can get questions from your analysis of their shoes. And then if you can tell some stories in here, great, turn your stories into those statements, all of that. And I really like painting them a picture and telling the story of getting them to imagine, if we all entered, yeah, I have a question. Yeah, thank you for asking. If we all enjoyed this interview, we move forward, and we're 12 months from now, what does the conversation look like? And what will we be talking about if we're actually celebrating a year of success with one another? Or some version of that. And they answer it and they're like, ooh, good, okay. And it's a really good question. You know, you hear about a 30, 60, 90 day. Well, I like to really paint them out into a picture of 12 months. And then I also want them to paint and do that same exercise a second time, only twice, because I don't want to push too much, but twice in the next 60 days. Like, what needs fixed this week and next week, so that in 60 days we're looking back at this conversation, and what would that conversation sound like? And I get them to tell me a story in that after painting a picture and a story for them. And then I close out with, what's the next step for us to move forward? Just because you ask that doesn't mean you're accepting the job. You're just asking the question so that you're the one guiding the conversation. Salary versus total compensation. So what kind of salary are you looking for, right? That's a scary question for a lot of people. I'm looking for a total compensation package. Just because they asked a question doesn't mean you have to answer it or in exact form. They want an answer, so we don't want to be rude. I'm looking for a total compensation package. I can be flexible in many designs, but I think the salary component would likely land somewhere between X and X. In every bit of negotiation I've ever done with a product, with service, with anything, there is a range. Okay. Give them a range, and your target, I feel like, should be about 25% above the low number within that range, because they could come back and negotiate against themselves and offer you right in the middle of your range. Well, you just got a nice little bump from what you were hoping for. Okay. And silence and comfort in it is, again, vital. Here, when you're having this conversation, anytime there's tension, the more silence you can inject, the better. Because most people do negotiate against themselves. And then you know that it's going to end at some kind of finalization or final question or answer from you. And just be ready for it. Know that it's coming. Say it out loud again in advance in your car. Thank you. Okay, can I work on the math and the designs and get back to you in 2 days? And okay, so what's the path for us to bring us together here, make it simple and obvious? I'm sorry, okay, so what's the path for us to bring us together here? Oh yeah, okay, so that's a next follow up conversation. If you get something that you don't like or you're going back and forth, again, instead of telling them what has to happen, you can get them on your side and you can say, okay, so what's the path for bringing us together here on my salary and compensation? Make it simple, make it obvious how to solve the whole equation. We just need a path of how to solve this. And you can even, again, label, you can say, hey, I've got, I know that I need this piece and I need this as a minimum. Are we able to work with that? I end with a question. Are we able to work with that and design the rest? Okay. So again, that is our whole circle and our whole becoming the obvious choice program, what it looks like. Those were our offer and interview components. So you've got that. And as a complimentary gift, this is actually just on executivepivots.com. If you'd like to take an assessment for free and learn about any gaps that you have in those 8 components, that is executivepivots.com.